Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Trader Merlin Show. It is your Thursday Bloodbath edition. Let me just check here real quick, make sure my audio levels are good. I thought I did that before the show, but may as well check it again right now. But it looks pretty solid. All right, let's dive into continuation. What I don't want to do is I don't want to do a total redo of yesterday's show, which was talking about, are these markets going to go lower? I think we got the answer today. The bigger question is, does this continue? And here is the graphic I set for today, which was just crypto bloodbath. We thought yesterday's numbers were kind of ugly. Today's were an absolute just meltdown. And I guess the question is, does it keep going? Let's take a look at some of the crypto numbers here. 1 second. There we go. Make sure I have my trading app up here. So let me sort by percentage losers here, and I'm just going to scroll up to my cryptocurrency portion of the portfolio, and I know it might be hard for you to read this screen here, but you're talking almost everything in crypto in double-digit losses today. Ripple down 23%, and Monero down 20%. What are some big ones? Render down 16%. You had Pepe Coin, who cares, down 16%. A lot of just heavy double-digit losses here for crypto. Take a peek at Ripple. This is just absolutely falling off a cliff, and that just has me wondering, is this might be a climactic moment where you do look to buy a little bit on the bounce? Although I mentioned yesterday, I don't believe that the broader picture for crypto is done. I think that we are going to see this sell-off slow down. My guess is we'll probably have a bounce, a little bit of an oversold, overdone bounce, a dead cat bounce, if you will, and then it'll slowly continue to drift lower just because it feels like the negativity in crypto space is abundant. The big one on the day, obviously, is going to be Bitcoin, which is down 13.5%, and that's coming off some of those lows there for Bitcoin. So 63,163. This chart doesn't have our lines on it. Let me go to the index one. That does have some lines. We had talked about some specific zones as to where this might pull back down to, and that would be on the weekly time frame here. Going back to that, there was a zone that we had mapped out and talked about that went all the way down to about 63. Well, today we literally hit it. It was 62,836 at the top of that zone, and today our low point was 62,257. So, man, absolutely brutal coming all the way down into that one. Dan says, Pax G only down 5%. And why is that? Because that's not really a crypto. It's just digital gold, right? It's a little oversold there, but yeah, pretty wild. Yeah, Big Eb says, Sailor's MicroStrategy lost another $7 billion. Right? Remember, we talked about yesterday, they were only down, I think, $2 billion. Remember, they said their average position was 76,000. So I'm going to just do some math here. 76,000. And we're currently at 63, which means they are down. Oof, Merlin, come on. I gotta do my math is all wrong here today. Let me just show you how to do it here. Clear all this stuff. We'll go 76,000 was their average price that they said. All right, we'll subtract that 63,000, which that number is pretty easy. That's $13,000 per Bitcoin they're out, and they have 760,000 Bitcoin, which means their losses are about $9.8 billion for MicroStrategy. Now, as you guys know, I had puts on MicroStrategy. I'll update you on that one. My MicroStrategy position was closed out today. When I saw it break the lows, or when I saw Bitcoin break the lows of yesterday, dumped it. We actually had a pretty nice hammer formation on Bitcoin. Let me show you this chart here on a daily time frame. Bring it on up. Let's go to Bitcoin futures. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was a thing. I was saying MicroStrategy. So let's go MSTR since we're on that. So MicroStrategy, you can see, had this little hammer formation yesterday, and I was pretty optimistic that I would not get filled on my 124 puts, which expire this Friday. And then, we gapped down past it and we started to drop, so I just closed that one out. I'll show you the loss I took on that one, which was pretty bad, but definitely better than continuing to hold that position. Now it's done another 4% in the after-hour session for MicroStrategy, so just getting absolutely crushed. And the chart of MicroStrategy is really just wild. I mean, there was really just no relenting in this sell-off today. We peaked out at about 121, call it 122, and here we are almost $20 lower. I mean, that is a giant move. 17% slide intraday plus another 4% in the after-hour session. So a bloodbath for MicroStrategy. And I wanted to just briefly touch on that before I dive into the other crypto. They won't delist it. A friend of mine was also asking about this. This is probably a better picture of what the markets look like today, just blood in the streets. Thomas sent a question yesterday. He sent this one today. He says, is this the black swan that you talked about yesterday? No, it's not. Not even close. Not even close. The black swan event will be when MicroStrategy is forced to liquidate. Now, I don't know if that started today. I would imagine there's going to come a point here soon when they start to get liquidated on their position. To me, that is the black swan. And it'll be a pretty public moment when it happens, because you'll hear every analyst site that's watching the blockchain will say, hey, Michael Saylor's, is being liquidated. It'll be pretty public knowledge when that happens. And obviously, it's not going to be all 760,000 Bitcoin at once, but it might be, 20,000 or 50,000 Bitcoin just to put themselves in a better financial situation. And by putting that liquidity into the marketplace, we could see a faster sell-off. And I think that once we hear that Michael Saylor is unloading, that'll create a little bit more panic. And the question is, does that create almost like an algorithmic trading sell-off where we see a really sharp spike down and then rip it back up? So it's a tricky situation to be in, but I think, for Thomas, for me, the black swan event is the tide going out and Michael Saylor not having that Bitcoin that he needs to sell, and now the pressure's on Coinbase and Fidelity. So it's not just MicroStrategy that's the problem here. It's Coinbase and potentially Fidelity as well. What did Patrick say? Merlin, has Michael Saylor been out soaking any podcasts or speeches last week? No. Most recent video? No. Yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want to talk too much right now. If he wants to do what he normally does, he should get on TV and be like, it's okay. We're talking long term. We've mentioned we're going to hold this long term. This is the normal 4-year cycle. He should get out there and create a narrative of calm, collected normality here for Bitcoin. But the acceleration that we see on Bitcoin's price chart should be concerning for anybody. And we have been talking about that potential for it to happen if we broke key levels. In my opinion, that's MicroStrategy. My opinion, we've broken through these key levels. I've got that 74,000 was a stopping point. That didn't do much. Then I had another one that I was looking for right around 68. That didn't do much. And here we are down at 63. You really got this lower level here right around 61 on the futures. So it does feel from a probability perspective that we are headed lower. Now, the only thing I would say here is let's add in volume just to see what this might look like from a climactic volume scenario. Look at the volume here for Bitcoin. Right? The last time we had a volume this big, it bounced for about the next 2 weeks. So this is a pretty substantial spike of volume. That was 23,000, almost 24,000 contracts back on November 21st. Today we traded, and it's still not done. We traded 21,000, call it 22,000 contracts, and those are some of the higher spikes that you've seen over the past year. Certainly there were some bigger ones back here in 2025, but we are seeing massive volume come in. And when you get massive volume, that's a sign of panic selling. If there's going to be a bounce, I think it's going to happen soon. But again, when we look at that trend as your friend to the bend at the end that I love so much, it does not paint a very pretty picture. And what was that comment there from Big Eb? I think I saw one earlier. It says in 1 year from 456 down to 107 is brutal for MicroStrategy. And that may not even be done, right? And if you look at it now, we're still lower than that. MicroStrategy is already at 103 in the after-hour session and probably going lower. Let's see what this looks like on a weekly basis, because obviously they've been buying and pumping up Bitcoin here. You are right at the bottom. There's a low candle on August 5th of 2024. It's a weekly candle that I have here. That low is 102.40. We are almost to it. After that, I think you're a straight drop down to about 70 bucks. So that's going to be another 30% drop from that level. So I think I was going to title today's show Max Pain, but I think if you're a MicroStrategy holder, Max Pain isn't there yet. I think you have the potential for this to really get ugly. And as Dan points out, worst case scenario would be that this thing does get delisted, but I think it's going to take a lot more than where we're at now from a current market environment, from price behavior to delist this. I mean, it would have to absolutely crater. And again, if it does, if Bitcoin does drop to, let's say, 60, 50, 30, that'll probably do it. Big Ed says, I puts today did not make a dent in my Bitcoin paperless. Oh, yeah. I'm very fortunate for my put positions. I thought I overpaid for my puts yesterday on Coinbase and on Tesla. I didn't do the MicroStrategies, and then I just closed out MicroStrategy this morning because I didn't want to mess with it anymore. I just don't trust it. So I'll be done trading MicroStrategy for quite some time. I can't see myself jumping into that highly uncertain marketplace there. But we'll talk about the puts I have on my Tesla and on Coinbase, which are also pretty ugly. Yes, this is water. Water, Patrick. No drinking today, just water. How much did MicroStrategy crash last time it sold off? Well, I mean, if you look at this chart here, it really has never had an event like this. MicroStrategy on a weekly basis. But, back here in 2020, if you look here, the 4-year cycle for Bitcoin started back here in 2020. Right? That was, they look like they had a bit of a lag. Their peak was in February of 2021. Looks like they go a little bit longer than that. But they fell 89% back in that sell-off. There was another sell-off that happened here in 2024, which wasn't near as aggressive. That was a fall of about 48%. If you go off this surge spike that we had, which is 500 plus, to where we are right now, MicroStrategy is already down 80%. 80%, and it's down more in the after-hour session. So, this is one I've been telling a lot of people, not just here, but in other classes as well, which is stay away from these treasuries. All these treasuries right here could implode. All of them. You look at UPXI, right? This one already looks like it's imploding. You have BTBT, looks like it's imploding. You have BMNR, which everyone loves. I've had multiple questions over the past 2 weeks. Is now the time to buy BMNR? And I keep saying no, just because it's a treasury. But, this is going to follow the price of Ethereum down. And as Ethereum gets crushed, so are all these different treasuries. So stay away from them unless you want to be short in the treasuries. But I don't think I could be that aggressive myself right now. A lot of these are just absolutely atrocious. So there you go. Stay away from treasuries. Leave them alone. I might remove this whole segment just because I don't even think it's worth being talked about. What are Saylor's latest comments? I have not seen him make many public statements today. You can follow him on X, and he's usually he's usually very positive on Bitcoin. And don't worry, diamond hands will hold forever type of thing. But what are you thinking about Coinbase? I'm nervous. So let's go look at Coinbase. Coinbase is just, I was really expecting it to, well, obviously I didn't expect it to fall this fast, right? My thought was I would like to hold this over the weekend, into the weekend, as I expect them to do some big commercials, have a nice spike up off the popularity they might gain, but they're being swept up with all of this major negativity. Now, fortunately, I bought the 170 puts yesterday. I bought the expiring March 20th. Those have surged. Luckily, I bought a little bit out, time on those. I bought March 20th. I was going to buy in February sometime, but it's too close to current strike. So, yep, on coin. So I bought enough to balance out my position. And the good news is today, if you look at the position I'm in, it would have been down monstrous. Would have been a very, very, very large down day. But those options offset almost all of it. It actually ended up being a $2,000 loss today when it should have been about a $16,000 loss today. Actually, more than that. Should have been about like a $19,000 loss in that position just today alone. And those options have offset it. So when I bought them, they were pricey. They were like $14 a contract. And I was like, oh gosh, that's just too much. Now I'm loving the fact that I have those contracts to protect my position here. And we'll see how long I'll hold that. I will probably keep Coinbase. I'm not sure 100% if I want to take that delivery, but we'll see what I decide to do tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure on this one. Let's go to the other one. Well, actually, let me continue on here. So with Coinbase, you really got to look at the next level we have, and that's this low point that goes back to April 4th of last year. That low point was 147.17, and we are currently sitting at 144.65 in the after-hour session. So we're just about to this real critical bounce point, which you can see it's kind of the lowest point it's been at. We're there right now in the after-hour session. It's a couple bucks away from it. If that breaks, then you're looking at 120, which would be another $20 drop from those levels. So I'm not really feeling good about this one at all. Don't like starting the year off with a bunch of winners. I had a bunch of losses. Had a couple losses last month, and I already have a couple this month, and this one is definitely going to be a bad one. But I do have the option to protect me. So, yeah, I'm not feeling comfortable with this one, although I do think long-term Coinbase will be fine. Coinbase, I think, will be the number one largest exchange in the U.S. If they pull off this everything exchange, I think they have a lot more money coming in. But right now, major pain point for Coinbase in the long haul. After we get the Clarity Act done and all the other different initiatives going through the House and the Senate, I think Coinbase will bounce and start to continue its ascent to the upside and turn around this downside one. But when is that going to come? I don't know. This is a pretty ugly one as well. I know Big Eb was talking about the fall for MicroStrategy. Well, it's not much more of a pretty picture for Coinbase. I trust the business model for Coinbase better. It peaked out back in July of last year at 444, and here we are at 145. This thing has lost $300 per share. Wild. Absolutely wild. Yes, Rob, it's definitely accelerating aggressively, as is all crypto, and I think that's just this panic selling. One thing I want to show you guys, and I mentioned this yesterday, is the liquidation map. And it's showing you, it'll show you the different leverage positions, and you can see there's a lot of really heavily leveraged short positions here for Bitcoin. We're talking 100 to 1 plus for Bitcoin, and not a lot of buyers. Obviously, that fuels more sell-off. Now, I didn't watch this over the last 48 hours or so, which I would like to have done just to see how this has shifted, because it feels like it's starting to lighten up a little bit. There's not as much heavy leverage shorts right now. Before, there were a lot more, kind of a big orange spikes here. What we're looking for are the orange spikes. The orange spikes are 100 to 1 leverage. Yellow is 50, blue is 10 to 1, and you're not seeing a lot of buyers. Not a lot of buyers underneath this with leverage, but I pointed this out yesterday and made it one of the talk tracks was when you have these leverage systems, it's easy to manipulate a market and push it down. And when you start triggering these triple, 100 to 1 leverage positions, you can imagine how quickly it can move price down or up depending on which way it goes. So from my perspective, liquidation-wise, I feel like the big part of Bitcoin's sell-off is done here. The question is, when do we get the flip side to jump in and start pushing with leverage longs and fight this back to the upside, which generally happens, right? We get these real big swing one way and then a real big swing happens the other. Do we hold at the current level, which I'm not very optimistic given the way things have been going, but do we hold? That's a big question that will be answered in the next 24 hours here at 62,800. Let's see. I like Tesla. I'm very bullish on Elon. Patrick, I'm very bullish on Elon as well, but if you look at what's going on with Tesla, this doesn't look good either. I mean, I'll look at the Magnificent 7 here just so you guys can see the Mag 7. You had two of them were up today. One, Meta, and you have Apple. Apple is down 0.21. So only Meta was up 0.18%, but Tesla down 2.17%. It sold off here a little bit in the after hour session too. Not good, down 1.2% in the after hours and 2.17 today. I have this line here at 380. So my strike price for Tesla is 415. That's the puts I bought as coverage yesterday. Fortunate as well. Those have offset most. Today was definitely a down day. Luckily, I don't have a huge position. You guys know I only have 400 shares as opposed to the 500 that I thought I was going to receive. So yeah, holding those 400, bought protection against those today. And I still have two puts open for the 410 strikes, which I may get executed tomorrow. We will see how that happens for tomorrow. But good argument for buying protection, even though it feels like it's expensive. I mean, the puts I paid for Tesla were $24 a pop. $24 a pop, and I had to buy 4 of them to cover my position. And it didn't even cover it fully. But it's worth spending $4,800. That saved me today, a substantial amount on the sell-off. Yeah, sometimes you got to do it, Ollie. You look at those prices and you're like, man, I don't want to pay those, but I also don't want to take a colossal loss if I'm wrong here and these markets start to bounce up. I also closed my short position today on the SPY. You guys know I've had SPY for a little bit. As we came down to these lows today, I closed my short position. So if you go SPY... right? We came right down into these lows. That low point on SPY goes back to January 20th. That low price being 676. I had the 666 strikes just kind of just for the demonic side of it. But my options expire where that vertical red line is. And that's why I wanted to dump, because time decay erodes very quickly. And on a day like today, I wanted to sell it when we had more of a panic moment, right? So you had a big gap down on SPY, red candle most of the day, and just looking pretty ugly as far as losses go. So people were looking to buy puts. The premium was higher, and it was right at that lower demand zone. So that's the reason that I decided to close that short position. I know it has a high probability of continuing down, but if I had the March strikes, then I probably would have kept it. And I thought about rolling it over, but the premium was obviously very high for that. So I decided just to close that one out. And fortunately, that's been, recouping a lot of the losses I incurred. That was a good one. So let me show you the breakdown of, let me see here what I have, a trade sheet. I'm trying to find my trade sheet for you. I tried to update everything for you. It's kind of messy. Here you go. So these are all the options that I have. So I closed out those MicroStrategy puts today. You can see there the MSTR in red. I sold them for 165. I bought them for 760, though that was bad. But, it got worse. And judging by, actually, let's see what they are right now. I'm just curious what those strikes are. Let's go to MicroStrategy and let's see if it's going to update at all here. Sorry, my throat's getting all raspy. MSTR. So here is your MicroStrategy option chain. The puts I had were for this Friday, which is the 6th, and I had the 124 strike. So you go out here to the 124 strike. Those, wow, currently going for $17.50, and I'm upset that I paid $7.60. So I'm pretty happy about that. That saved me, $10 per share on MicroStrategy by buying those puts. So yeah, happy I bought them back at $7.60 as opposed to trying to buy them back at $17. So that was pretty good. No, I'm definitely not complaining, Andy. Definitely not complaining. Real fortunate, very fortunate there. The second position that was closed out today was the SPY. Not a huge win, but nonetheless, it was a win. I paid $370 for those and sold them for $511. And then the protection pieces here, you can see that was protecting my Coinbase and my Tesla positions. Those are expensive. Really is that some profit? So the SPY was a profit. The MicroStrategy was a loss, a much bigger loss. But, it's certainly a much bigger loss on MicroStrategy. I made $1.40 per share on SPY. I lost almost $6 per share on the MicroStrategy. Is what it is. So I still have right now. I've got the calls against my 400 shares. I went long some puts to protect my 400 shares, and I have this position up here for another 200 on Tesla, which I'll probably exercise tomorrow. I still got those Coinbase, and I may close those out tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure on what am I going to do there. And then I bought puts against my position as well, just to protect myself from more downside movement if it does continue to fall. So there's the updated positions as they stand in my portfolio. Not a good day. It's been a pretty rough week, that's for darn sure, but it could always be worse. So Thomas's question again, no, I don't think this is the black swan. When we hear everything about Michael Saylor and how all this, I think this could be one of those congressional issues that they'll talk about fractional reserve banking and how it's called rehypothecation, where when you deposit your crypto or your assets at one firm, they take those assets and do something with them to generate more income. In this case, my belief is that Coinbase is taking their crypto holdings from their customers and telling MicroStrategy, yeah, we have enough for you, and they're pretending that they're giving it to him, but it's actually customer shares. They're rehypothecating it instead of going to the market and you're making a spread on it. If that ends up burning Coinbase and MicroStrategy or Fidelity, whoever's the custodian here, then it could really, it could be one of those things that does go to the floor of the House Senate Committee on Banking and Finance and saying, hey, listen, we need oversight on this one. It could be one of those changing moments for crypto firms overall. But we're not there yet, Thomas. We're not there yet. All right, let me go to another question here. I see Patrick says, Merlin, if there was one thing you do so that you can handle some stress of trading, what would it be? Breathing, exercising, random question. It's funny you say that. The older I get, I guess this stuff doesn't bother me. What bothers me the most, and this is a weird one, and you guys know my personal story I've been telling you about it a long time, is I was watching a video today of this lady, and she was mixing two chemicals together and showing her daughter the chemical reaction to these two chemicals, and the light of the face on this kid just lit up and was so excited. The stuff that gives me anxiety is not having children. That is probably the most anxious I get when I start thinking about all the things I could teach that child or children. So that's the only thing that gets me anxiety. Having a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 loss day doesn't give me anxiety at all. Generally, it's hedged. I'm not going to take a $100,000 loss anymore. Those are extremely rare when I'm really swinging for the fences. Marcia says, I'm available. Should I have a little application form on my website? Oh, as a child. I thought you meant as a partner, Marcia. I know, Big Gap. I'm not worried about that. So to answer your question, about what do you do with anxiety, Patrick? One thing that's really helped with anxiety overall is, and I've shared this with a few people, it's really helped them out as well. Depends on how deep your anxiety is, right? Depends on what level of anxiety or panic you have. If it's just you're uncomfortable, then get up and walk around. Get out of your house, go walk around the block. That is the first thing I will do when I start having an anxiety or really feel uncomfortable. The other thing is, when it's a big loss, sometimes you just can't stop thinking about it, right? It just lives in your head and will not get out. For anxiety or panic attack, no, Lori says drugs. I would recommend you do anything but drugs, right? Try to figure out a way you can deal with these things naturally is the much better way to go. You have the power to deal with any sort of anxiety or issue that comes your way. Sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. It's taken me a long time to figure out what makes my brain tick and why I wig out sometimes. We all have our moments. But one trick that really works, Patrick, is grab an ice cube. I'll give you an example. You guys know way too much about my personal life. I was over at a friend's house for a game night a couple months back, and anxiety hit me so hard. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 9. I mean, I was like freaking out. I was just about to leave this place. I'm uncomfortable. I'm sweating. I'm just on edge, and out of nowhere for no reason whatsoever. So I was reading this book. It's called Dare. It's a book on anxiety and dealing with anxiety. In the book Dare, one of the things he cites is grab an ice cube. Go to the freezer, grab an ice cube, and just squeeze it. Put a towel underneath if you want, but just squeeze this ice cube so hard that your hand feels like you're gonna get frostbite. Like you're literally in pain holding this thing. And what you'll notice is your brain, your focus is now on the pain, and whatever you were thinking about before will dissipate. Now, obviously, having a big loss is going to stick with you for a while. But for my anxiety, when it pops up randomly, the ice cube trick is awesome. It is really, really a great trick. For some people, breathing works. I see Lori put in there breathing. Doesn't do a damn thing for me. My brain goes at such a high speed that I can't do they call it box breathing. You breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, and do that 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. I can't do that. It just doesn't work for me. Ice cube works wonders, walking around the block. Another one that really works well is Sudoku, the little puzzles, because my brain is so focused on math. Rob says meditation. Yeah. Relaxation, that's the whole point. I'm trying to relax myself, but anxiety is a beast, man. It's a tough one to deal with, but especially when you have a day like today and large positions, it can definitely create some anxiety. I would also say, Patrick, if it's trading related, I would just certainly scale back or take a couple days off and regroup. Because if, let's say, for example, today, right, you look at the end numbers for today. Let me just go and show the market here so we can see the S&P wasn't that bad. And we were only down 1.2%, right? This doesn't look bad at all. It looks like a normal pullback, right? Well, when you flip over this chart, this is screaming pain. And when you have a market like this, your brain changes, especially if you're heavily exposed. And I would argue at this point, I've got pretty big exposure to this market. If you have too big of exposure, that anxiety is going to be magnified because now you're like, oh, this is money I can't afford to lose. I would recommend scaling back a little bit, right? Just move your positions down, take a breather. I think I told you back in the late 90s, my mentor, he was great, man. He would just tell me bluntly what to do. And he said, set rules for yourself. He goes, if you ever have 2 losing days in a row, or 3 losing days in a row, take a day off. I was like, okay. So I'd have 3 losing days in a row. I took 2 days off, went to the pool, read some books on trading. Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, by the way, is a great book for you to understand and read that one. Everybody here should have read Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. It's really good. Marsha says, but someone is making big money shorting Bitcoin. Someone is, but you can't think that. If you're losing money in Bitcoin, that's all that matters to you, right? Forget about anybody else because their money doesn't matter. They're not going to just send you a check and say, oh, sorry, you lost money. I made a bunch. No, you've got to take a break. So for all of you, whether you're trading crypto or futures, options, commodities, doesn't matter. If you get in that point where you're losing or you're in so much of a losing position that it changes your mental being, your sweaty palms, you're uncomfortable, you have anxiety, you're in too big of a position. You need to scale out of that and go back to something normal. And also, I would say take a couple days off because a scared trader will lose 90% of the time. You're going to lose more often than not if you're trading with scared money, you're uncomfortable, you're nervous, you don't follow your rules. Yeah, it's a dangerous path to be on if you're having anxiety about your trading, Patrick. Silver did take a bit of a dump today, but unfortunately, I'm out. Big Gab, are you still holding? He's told, I think you closed your short positions too. We would have made a bit more, but not worried about it. When I have a bad day trading, I listen to Merlin. Well, thank you. I hope that helps sometimes. And I'm happy when you guys go in there and mention to me that you're losing. I think that's actually a good thing. I know, let me take that back. Not that you're losing, but your humbleness and openness to say I'm losing is a tough thing to do. Going back to that trading floor that I was on in the late 90s, there were only a couple people that would openly talk about their losses. I'm one of them. Most people would just brag about their winners. And as you guys have probably gleaned from watching this show for a long time, winners are fine. I don't usually talk too much about my winners. It's the losers I'm talking about, right? And so, Lori says, I'm losing. Well, then let's figure out what you're doing. Right now, I think everybody, if you're in crypto, you're losing. Everyone's losing, right? Unless you're shorting crypto right now. We talked about this a couple days ago as well. I think this was on Monday, which was there was a question about what should I do and to protect my position. Well, you could have bought some puts on IBITs. You could have actually just been shorting outright the futures markets to hedge your position. Just like yesterday when I was like, I'm in a painful position here. Do I want to continue to hold these positions? Yes, I do. Okay, then let me hedge them. It's going to cost me a lot of money to hedge them, but it's much better than going into it naked, knowing this market could fall apart, and it did today. Calculator on mine. BTC is up on a ledger, and yeah, good. Don't look at that ledger anyway. Andy says, "Where is the line? The line for what, Andy? The line for knowing that you're losing, or what? What? Define the line. Talking about losing helps me. Yeah, Big Bride, no regrets, 100%." I would say that my trading turned around when I stopped talking about the winners. Those are close to me. I very rarely. I do with you guys now because I'm showing trade setups there. So yeah, okay, we'll talk about the winners. We'll talk about the losers too. Like, today, MicroStrategy, bad loser. And I had one last month too that was a pretty bad loser. But more often than not, when I'm talking about my losers, it's a learning experience. And I try to use that as a learning lesson to make my trading better. And you all should too. Let's see. I'm at the show because you're open. Yeah. And there's a lot of gloating buttheads out there. Angie says, where is the line for people? Oh, you mean because we're all in a line? There's so many? Yeah. It's tough. Didn't want to start my February this way. I'm definitely down for February, but it's okay. Remember, your trading career is not made up of what happened yesterday or today. Your trading career is the result of the thousands of trades that you're going to make or the thousands of days that you're going to be trading. And we're going to have down days along the way. The tricky part is knowing when this whole thing turns. And so Oliver has been, riding me for months now on how I'm Mr. Negative Nancy and I'm the doom and gloom guy. Who's laughing now, Oliver? And to be fair, I did not capitalize in this big downturn. I should have followed what I said I was going to do last year, which is get out in September, and I did not. And, you look at Bitcoin now, oh, man, brutal. Let's go from its peak here in October to where we are today. Bitcoin is down 49%. We're like 50% down. Wild downside move. And I could have circumvented all of that had I stuck to my original plan. But, I convinced myself that this time was different. And I still do believe this time is different. But we are getting just a wild sell-off here. One thing that I wanted to bring up about this current move. Let's zoom out here. So I've mentioned this before. This is the slope of this line. If you are in crypto and following that 4-year cycle. The slope of this line is the average of what price should be doing if it is in fact going through that 4-year cycle phase, which would be down about 70% for 1 year. That's your 1 year window there. And it actually shows it. I got it lower here. It should be right on 37. So if you're using Bollinger Bands, and if you like, I could add Bollinger Bands on here. I can tell you right now that Bitcoin is outside its lower Bollinger Band. It has just fallen off a cliff. So for anyone who's looking for opportunity, this may actually be a buying opportunity, right? Let's add the Bollinger Bands. You can see that literally every day for the past 6 days, we've been below the lower Bollinger Band, but now we've really accelerated out of it, and we're into a demand zone. So, I'm as painful as it is right now and as crazy as it looks, I do think you'll see a bounce for Bitcoin. I do think you'll see a bounce for Bitcoin shortly. If it's not tomorrow, then it's probably going to be over the weekend as everyone kind of panic sells into the weekend. But on a day like today, when you have such a big move, we're down at one point over 14%, it would lead me to believe you're going to see a pretty significant bounce here. Not all the way back up to 100,000 or anything, but, could we bounce back up to 75, 76? Yeah, very possibly if we get those leverage long positions to come in and push this up. But from a technical perspective, we are way oversold on Bitcoin. On climactic volume into a demand zone, it's just kind of like everything just kind of lines up for a bounce here. We shall see. We shall see. Big Ollie says, no, I'm waiting for the 60s to buy. Well, it is the 60s, my friend. It is 60s. You got a low point today on Bitcoin on that spot price of 62,257. Time to buy it. No, you got to be careful if you're buying right here. I'm not buying anymore right now just because I want to keep some powder dry in case this whole market rolls over. I am a little concerned since we're on this topic. We can jump over here into Amazon. Amazon's numbers look like this. Their CapEx expenses for 2026. They said they're going to do about $200 billion. Well, those are again some big numbers going forward. And Meta said that they were going to increase theirs as well. So did Microsoft. So there's big CapEx money going into AI. So the expectations were their previous number was 125 billion in 2025. Amazon says they're going to do 200 billion. The earnings per share missed by 2 cents. Their sales numbers were okay, and Amazon getting crushed in after-hour session. Bring up AMZ in here for you. You're down 9.8%. So this is not helping either. Of course, this makes me wish I'd kept my short position on the S&P. But there's your Amazon piece. Let me get rid of that Bollinger Bands because it makes it ugly. There we go. Get rid of Bollinger Bands. You're down 9%, 10% now on Amazon, which is not good. So you've got, let's just show you the last few days. Here's your Microsoft chart, which has been falling apart, and it's fallen apart in the after-hour session again. Microsoft down was 5% today. Amazon down 4.4% and another 10% in the after hours. So that's huge. Tesla is actually doing poorly in the after hours as well, down 1.3% after a 2% down day. So everything is just taking a hit in the after-hour session. You saw NVIDIA there real quick, getting punished in the after-hour session too. Google down 1.7% in the after-hour session. Apple down, actually, is just slightly up. It's the only thing that's up. And then you have Meta, which in the after-hour session down another 2.49. So it looks, for all intents and purposes, like tomorrow is going to be another big down day for the NASDAQ. You can see right now on the 5-minute chart in the shaded blue areas after hours, it's fallen pretty good right now. So, your Friday could be a pretty wild one. Based off that, though, what I would expect to see, I'd expect to see some, like the market gap down tomorrow, start off with an aggressive sell-off, and then start to rally back up. You'll get bottom fishers coming in over the weekend. Palantir, you say, down almost 7% on the day, and down another 2.7% in the after-hour session. There's definitely value to be had. If you look at where Palantir is, you're stretching it right now at the very end of this demand zone. In the after hours, it's already past it. So it looks like this whole thing's reversed. It looks like a head and shoulders pattern for Palantir. It looks like you're going lower. That 100 mark does seem to be pretty tasty, right? Look at that 100 mark. Oliver's saying, Hood, look, it's where's the safe haven here, right? There isn't anything right now. Wow, man. Robinhood was down 10% today and another 1.93 in the after-hour session. I would say the best place to be right now is cash for a week or so. I think there could be some great buying opportunities here in the next couple days, but to play it safe, I would go to cash and just hold and go to the sidelines for a little bit and wait. Wait and see if this does, in fact, roll over, because we haven't seen the S&P roll over. We've seen it stuck. We've seen it just go sideways here. Alyssa, should we be concerned about the Japanese election on Sunday? Yes, to some extent. The new president or new prime minister, or whatever they call him over there, will have an impact on policy and the stance that they have from international business. So yeah, it does have a big impact. Not as, I don't think it's the biggest piece we'd be paying attention to, but certainly is something that could cause some big market moves. Emperor, is that what it is? I don't think they call him an emperor, is it? Bernard wants to know about Netflix. So Netflix, hey, you had something positive on the day, but look at this chart. At some point, yes, the answer is it's going to bounce. At some point. But right now, I wouldn't wager on that one. You're below every demand zone that I would have been buying at. You know, there's some nice spots right around $82, and we're already below that. We've closed below that for a couple of days. You know, I think your next major bounce point, and it's a nice one because you had an area of consolidation, and then it just ripped for months. It's right around 75,000. So there you go. 75,000 Vanara is probably the only place I'd be interested, but you're catching a falling knife. I mean, this is the avalanche that's rolling down a hill, and you're like, oh, it should stop right here. It's going to stop when it stops. And I think the safest thing for us to do is just sit on the sidelines and wait for them to bottom if you're thinking about buying, or short them, because almost everything out there looks ugly. NASDAQ has, in my opinion, rolled over. We've broken this little trend line here. We're making lower lows. S&P still is holding, barely. You can look at the Dow. There's the Dow futures. Dow is still holding. And then you have the Russell. Russell still looks okay. It's still okay. How far will it drop? 85% down below. I'm not sure what you're asking about, Rob. Not sure what you're asking about. Anthony Rumps, strategy earnings and balance sheet is pretty clear. Their actual debt is $6 billion. Their preferred and equity obligations total $16 billion. Yeah, but remember they've lost $9 billion in the last 2 days. So you think 23,000? I read that as well, Anthem. I read that there was somewhere around 20 or 30. And I tried to look up information on it last night, but there was one of his major funding rounds was used to get loans with a 2-to-1 collateralized rate with Bitcoin, but it doesn't say what the liquidation price is. I'm sure they'll have enough money to cover that, but you know, when you're losing billions and billions and billions at a clip, especially 10 billion in 2 days, you know, that doesn't look very good for anybody who wants to be investing in MSTR. The Bitcoin dropped 30. When it dropped 7. I'm sorry, Rob. Don't know those ones. Your numbers are confusing me, Rob. Numbers confuse me. So anyway, Amazon down big after hours. You know, I'm one of Amazon's biggest fans. I look at their sales of $213 billion. That was probably half of mine. I think that was half me. But where is it? If you look at the line here, where is Amazon? I'm going to move this line. So I had this demand zone at 210. I was talking about maybe selling some puts at 210. It's already down here where the horizontal red line is. Now, what makes this interesting for Amazon is you'll notice that there's a pretty big gap that happened on the 12th of May. And we are right down to that candle that kind of started to fill that gap. And I think if we close that one, then Amazon will be down around 193 in no time. So it'll be a very interesting day tomorrow to see what happens with Amazon. My gut wants me to buy some, right? My gut would be like to buy some calls or sell some puts on Amazon around those levels, just because it's just a smoking deal. But you know, things could get a lot worse if this market does start to roll over, and there's a lot of negativity out there right now. Then I think we could be in a much deeper problem. Sorry, Oliver. I'm not being the doom and gloom guy, but the numbers are starting to look pretty ugly. The dollar's on a nice little bit of a rally. You're watching that 10-year bond still trending upwards, although it was down 2.1% today, trading at 4.2% or 4.18. So yeah, got to be really careful here, because if the S&P does start to roll over, there's a lot of ground to sell off here. A lot of ground to sell off. All right, what else did I have? I had one other question here that was on Coinbase. This was from Neo. Neo says, I'd like to revisit an email I sent you last August. I did not know then that you're not a big Elliot Wave fan, but I think it's worth looking at this particular case. Again, I adjusted locations for my fib lines on this weekly chart, but overall I think Elliot Wave was right on the long-term trend, and I mentioned back then. Okay, so here's the chart that you gave me, and I'm just going to go out and tell you why I can't stand Elliot Wave. Okay, let me move my drink over here, grab my little drawing pen since I think this is in PowerPoint. So, all right. So, Neo drew on here Elliot Wave. All right, he's got his lines drawn. I don't know why my pen is not. Hold on, I got to get the little. I don't know how I get the little red dot. There it is. So you can see here on the screen, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I think it's you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then what that means, and I think what you're addressing is 5 should be a huge move to the upside, and it's a bigger move. And this is why I don't like Elliot Wave, because look at where your numbers are drawn. You're cherry picking data, because really it should have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C. And you can say, oh, that Elliott wave pattern is now done. And now we look at the next one. See, the thing with Elliott wave is if you torture a chart long enough, it'll tell you whatever you want to hear. And I'm not a fan of Elliott wave. More important, it's not the wave formation, Neo. And again, feel free to use Elliott wave all that you would like. That's fine. The more important thing is, where does this thing turn? Right? Where is it turning and how can I use that to my advantage regardless of what it has done and how many times it has done it? I'm looking for an impulse and corrective phase. Right now we're in a really ugly corrective phase, which technically points to this level here and says this is a good buy point. Well, we're already below that, I believe. Rob said, but 5 broke below number 4 above. Yeah, and that's the thing. It always has a modifier because you would have gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, and then this breaks down and go, oh, well, no, let's go different. Let's redraw this. Let's redraw it and redraw it and redraw it and redraw it and redraw it over and over and over and over again until it finally matches up with your narrative that you want to tell. And that's why I don't like Elliott wave. Sorry. But I do like the behavioral analysis of price where it says you have an impulse move. That's not an Elliott wave. Wave 5 cannot impose on wave 1. All right. So, well, this would actually be wave 4, right? And if you're talking about this being wave 1, then you're saying that this fifth level down can't break that one. Again, too many little details. Focus on impulse and corrective phases, you'll do better. Second wave is longer than wave 1. Okay. What about fib numbers? Isn't Elliott wave? No, not necessarily. I do believe that with Elliott wave, they like to use Fibonacci in conjunction with it. I actually like Fibonacci more than Elliott wave. Elliott wave, you have this picture, but then there's a picture inside of the picture, and there's a picture inside of that picture, and then a picture inside of that picture, inside of that picture, inside of that picture. It's just this nested view of stuff that I think you spend too much time going through all the details, like, oh, well, this can't impose on this one, and this one can't be longer than this one. Yes, it can. Markets are going to do whatever they want to do. Candle Swinger says, all I see is pin the tail of the donkey. I like that. That's a good one. Did you get the nail? Did you pin it on there? Supply and demand work better, and it's also easier, Marcia. Like right now, this picture tells me I don't even really care all that other stuff. It's nice to see that it's been making higher highs and the same lows, but we're right back now to the same lows. So I'd be inclined, based off this, to use this as a buying point. Now, the only challenge here is it's Coinbase, right? Coinbase makes me pretty nervous right now, and I'm long Coinbase, unfortunately. I'm the only one that think Elliott wave was like those Russian nesting dolls. Yeah, and there you go, Marcia. And what was that yellow box drawn from? A demand zone, right? That yellow box drawn from a demand zone. So Neil, I appreciate it. Thank you for sending it in. If Elliott wave works for you, that's fine and dandy. It's just not something that I find useful for my trading. I guess one of the main reasons is I like simplicity. I like when things are real just simple and easy and don't get complicated. And I think the Elliott wave makes it more complicated and you have to spend more time trying to figure out all these different levels and zones and all the different rules. Somebody gave me it was like $180 book on Elliott wave once, and I started to read through it, and I made it about halfway. I was like, too much work. All right, so let me go to your earnings calendar for tomorrow, actually for today. Here's your Amazon. So they, as I mentioned, they just barely missed earnings, and they're down 10%. So oof, that's rough. Nothing else that important today. For tomorrow, these stupid ads are in my way. Let's see if I can keep complaining about the ads. Maybe it'll go away. It's offensive. I found this ad offensive. It's Tai Chi. It's a stress-free ad, and I found it offensive. At least the window closes. All right, so for tomorrow, you got Philip Morris. You have CBOE, Biogen. But otherwise, not a lot of big names out there tomorrow. You have Carlyle Group, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The economic calendar, though. So we had 2 rate announcements for central banks. You had one for the British pound. That came in line with expectations as, 3.75%, no biggie. You also had the main refinance rate for the euro at 2.15%. And for the U.S., well, remember we've seen a slower job creation on JOLTS job openings and ADP non-farm employment change earlier this week. Today, our unemployment claims came out higher than expected. So we are starting to see 3 bad pieces of jobs data this week so far. And you can see here the JOLTS job openings today. It was actually supposed to be on Tuesday, but it came out today. Much lower than expectations. 6.54 million versus 7.25. So we're going the wrong way. Not good. Not good there at all. So that's your bad news for today. The big stuff happens tomorrow. You'll see the unemployment rate come out for the U.S. Why is it not on my screen? That's interesting. Did they move it? So there should be an unemployment rate coming out tomorrow. It was here as of yesterday, so I'm not sure whether they have moved, but unemployment rate should come out tomorrow for the U.S. 1 hour before the equity markets open, and then we have consumer sentiment, etc. So I'm not sure why it's not showing me the jobs data on here. But that is your economic data, your earnings calendar. It's usually the first week of the month, Luis. It's always the first Friday of the month. So that's why I'm kind of confused here. But let's see if they moved it to the next Friday. No, they didn't move it to the 13th. It should be. Huh, that's kind of weird. Did they bump it up a day or two? I'm just trying to find, see where they may have moved it to. Retail sales. Yeah, they moved ours till Wednesday of next week. That's weird. I'm not sure why that is. But it's showing our unemployment rate numbers coming out on Wednesday. Strange. I don't know why they did that. But yep, you're right. They did move it. So it was scheduled as of yesterday. It was supposed to be for tomorrow, but now they've moved it, and we're going to see unemployment rate on the 11th. So we don't have to worry about that kind of volatility impacting our market tomorrow. But you do have consumer sentiment numbers and inflation expectations, as well as a couple FOMC members speaking. But other than that, that is your Friday afternoon session. I'll probably have a nice little frosty glass of whiskey with you guys tomorrow. So if you have something you want me to see, if you want me to cover on tomorrow's show, just email me. If you go to the YouTube channel, I was all excited. There was like 40 comments on the YouTube video from yesterday. I was like, oh, this is great. And it's all scammers. Every single one of them is scammers trying to pump some cryptocurrency. So don't fall for that garbage that's underneath the comments section. Scammers everywhere. Always trying to take money from you. All right, you guys have a fantastic remainder of your day. Email me with any questions or comment below any of the YouTube videos, and I will see you guys on Friday's show. Take care.